also marks World Down Syndrome Day. This year's theme is We Decide. It's a call to allow people with Down syndrome to participate in making decisions that affect their own lives. People living with the condition want to be accepted, of course, and be included as equal members of society. So how is it in 2021? Iqbal Karbanee, a paediatrician, we are still having a discussion where it essentially means, good morning, that people with Down syndrome are not being given a choice about their lives. How is that even possible in 2021?
Well, I think it's actually a very topical debate, as you mentioned. And, Down syndrome is a tragic chromosomal abnormality in which there are certain defects that occur that the person is born with. And those defects range from cardiac problems affecting the heart to developmental problems, as well as sometimes even decreased mental capacity. So I think that, the basis for this stems from the debate on whether people with Down syndrome, once they become adults, one of the key factors in this debate is whether they should be allowed to then have their own children. And unfortunately, it becomes a huge moral and ethical debate because they have a genetic abnormality which will be transmitted to the next generation. So it then becomes an issue of whether this is then unfair on procreating to produce another child who's going to have the same or worse problem.
And you can understand very quickly how families who may have children with Down syndrome or those with Down syndrome themselves can get very, very upset when we start talking about decisions around procreation and building a family are not even being made by them. They're being told whether they can or cannot. I can imagine the anger that families must have.
Yes, no, I mean, it is totally understandable. But I think it also needs to be informed by the correct sort of information. I think once people understand that this is not an infringement on anyone's rights, it's trying to make the best possible decision using very difficult circumstances. So it's not to say that anyone is denying the rights of a child or person with Down syndrome. They have equal rights. They should be accepted with their abilities recognized and their separate needs recognized, and they should be accepted. Saying that, however, it doesn't give us carte blanche to do whatever we want, whenever we want. There have to be informed decisions, and I think it's about informing the debate with the correct information. Like, as I said, we know that every single cell of a person with Down syndrome has an extra chromosome. So if that person has to then procreate, that will be transmitted. There's no way around it. It's not an infringement of human rights. It's a scientific fact. So that then should inform the decision. And I think when parents see that that would be the potential problem, it will help them make a better decision.
And yet here we are on the 21st of March talking about decision-making and basic human rights, and it's Human Rights Day in South Africa. So if we all take a listen to what you've said, Iqbal, and obviously you're looking at it from a scientific perspective, we cannot detach that at all from the emotional perspective here as well. I mean, how do you try and manage a situation like this? I only have a couple of minutes left with you. I mean, how does this conversation even come up with a family who has a child with Down syndrome or someone with Down syndrome? How do you even get into this conversation?
Well, it's extremely difficult. I mean, you remember that if a person with Down syndrome has now reached adulthood, that family has been through an extremely long and difficult and arduous journey. So for them to have reached that point is a huge success. One must remember that if the objective here is for, let's say, a person with Downs to have a family, there are other options. For example, adoption could be a great option in which they could adopt a child who's, has a normal chromosomal complement and therefore have a family which is now a nuclear family and what is according to what they expect. So there are other ways of dealing with this, but I think the overall arching sort of theme should be one of empathy, understanding, and making sure that people with Downs are accepted and that they have full human rights. That is beyond doubt, beyond contestation. I think it's more about what are the issues that are particular to them that need required consideration.
Just a final question to you, Iqbal, because there are going to be people who are going to jump on social media as you and I sit here and go, how dare we talk about Human Rights Day, World Down Syndrome Day, and in the very same breath, it always seems that we are deciding as a society what is considered a human right for those with Down syndrome? How are we even allowed to have this discussion? It's a final comment from you, because people are going to be upset by this, I'm sure.
Yeah, well, we're not deciding. Nobody can decide, and there's no clear guideline to say they can or they cannot. So nobody's deciding for anybody. I think it's more about a family with Down syndrome, in my recommendation, asking for the correct advice, making an informed decision, and if they feel that that is the route they want to follow, we have to respect that. So no one's denying them anything, and there's no legal or any other obstacle preventing them. I think it's more a matter of simply informing the family that's concerned what exactly to expect. So once they have that information, they can then make their own informed decision.
I appreciate your time in speaking to us. Iqbal Karbanee, paediatrician, joining us via Zoom this morning. Iqbal, thank you for your time.